Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Rebekah. This interview is with Rebekah Reese, one of the members of the previous Finders course. Hello, Rebekah.
Hello, Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So let's start with the obvious, which is what for you changed? What were you like prior to the course, and how did you experience life prior to the course? And what changed for you, and how is that all experienced now?
Well, I was pretty much a happy person before the course, but I'm even more in well-being, and I have inner peace and joy, and just experiencing life with a new awareness, a new consciousness. Uh, it is it's a shift in consciousness to a new clarity of perspective. And I don't know that people notice that I'm different. My husband does. Little annoyances don't bother me anymore. He's the beneficiary of that after 36 years of marriage. Um, so my life has changed dramatically on the inside, and life is better. It's just a different perspective.
That's interesting. So I think one of the things that is unique about you in our interview today is that you were one of the people that was happy going into
Yes,
the last course. So you
yes.
scored very, very happy on all of your well-being measures and whatnot. And I think one of the things that you hear from happy people when you tell them about this course or this type of program is the thought that, well, I'm already happy, right? I mean,
Hmm.
and you were really high on those happiness measures. So you would have been, probably saying that you're one of the happiest people that you know or whatever prior to the course. So if you were already happy, you know, how
Why
could
did I take the course?
yeah, why did you take the course? But also, how could there be so much of a change in terms of overall happiness and well-being?
Well, the reason I took the course was spiritual evolution,
Mm.
which really has nothing to do with happiness. It's an inner spiritual goal and seeking and finding. Um, how do you explain a transformation from happiness to extreme happiness? Um, there's just an inner joy. I mean, I had things that annoyed me and bothered me, and I was sort of judgmental about people and very impatient. Patience was not one of my virtues, but now I have infinite patience. It just doesn't matter what's going on, the life situation. Um, I have infinite patience, and that contributes to your overall happiness. And all judgment has just totally dissolved when you reach that state of oneness and beingness, and realize we are all one. Um, that all goes toward an inner peace, the patience, the calmness, the stillness, and the being.
How did it, just out of curiosity, inform your spiritual or your religious aspects of your life or your inner life?
Um, well, like I said, my primary goal, and I really had no expectations going into this course. I didn't know what it was going to be. I was very open-minded, and just excited to do some mind work. And my primary goal, people will realize that you will have them set goals. My primary goal was spiritual evolution. I believe in the evolution of spirit, and I have always wanted to attain the highest level of spiritual evolution in this lifetime as I possibly can, to go on to whatever is next. And I'm not a religious person. I have my own spirituality that is very fluid. It ebbs and flows and changes. And does that answer that question?
Sure, that's great. Do you think that, did you achieve your goal, do you think?
Oh, yes. I achieved all my goals, my sub goals, uh, my dealing with negativity. That was one of my sub goals, was to just not react to negativity, and that has just fallen, dissolved. Negativity from anyone does not affect me one iota, and that's a contributor to happiness too. When you don't deal with other people's drama and negativity, it doesn't matter. Let them go on their spiritual path, and I'll go on mine.
Absolutely. All right, cool. What other benefits? Have you noticed any other benefits that you want to talk about or that you can think about?
Let's see. Other than joy and peace and patience, no, there really are. I mean, just overall life is very fluid and in the moment, and you either accept what is going on or you change it. You just kind of go with the flow. It's more fluid, more easy.
Along those lines, what about things like synchronicity?
Hmm. Well, I'm not going to tell my usual synchronicity story, but the most wonderful synchronicity has increased. I think you elevate your level of accepting life as it comes. So the universe kind of understands that, and provides the synchronicity that just makes your life flow easier.
That's cool. I certainly don't
Not
blame you
really.
for not wanting to tell your big synchronicity story. That's personal and complicated politically in your life that probably doesn't need to be broadcast out to the world from your perspective. I totally,
But
totally
it's a
understand.
good one. It's a good one.
What would you say were some key moments for you during the course?
The key moments, like the key methods that resonated.
It could be methods. It could be just literally key moments, sort of key transitional moments, or just
Well,
whatever stands out as, what was really important, what made a significant difference for you.
well, I think one of the key moments was when I was stressing out about missing a couple of classes due to a family commitment. And this was pretty early on in the course. And I was so stressed out, and just a lot of anxiety about missing a couple of classes because of this travel. And I just kind of had a really meltdown day and thought, wow, I came to the realization that I'm really stressing out about an enlightenment course, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So I laughed at myself and let it go, released it, and synchronistically, I didn't have to go on the trip, and I didn't miss any classes. So the universe heard me on that one. And the releasing of the expectations of, it's like, what was I going to do? Fail an enlightenment course? I mean, worst case scenario. How terrible would that be? I was already happy. So letting that go, releasing that, I thought was a key moment in this course. And everyone will find different methods, in this 3-month intensive class that will resonate with them. Everybody's different. But the key methods for me were the Levinson forgiveness technique and the Sperry Andrews awareness method, and the authentic happiness pure conscious experience methods.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
everyone will find out what those are if they take the course.
And that's
But
interesting.
I lived in that. Yeah,
No,
go
that's
ahead.
interesting because the Levinson stuff and also Sperry Andrews came at the end of the first class. The course is 2 classes, basically like
Mm-hmm.
5 to 6 classes or so. And you really had your transition. You had your awakening, or whatever we want to call it, but your transition to persistent non-symbolic experience in basically around the end
Mm-hmm.
of that first class.
I did.
So you feel like those were the key methods for you personally that helped you make that initial transition.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Was the authentic happiness in the second course?
It was. That was kind of in the second week of the
Yeah.
second class.
Yeah. Well, all of the methods in the second half of the course really solidified what my shift of consciousness and my awareness. It just solidified it. I crossed over right at the end of the first one, and then all of those methods after that really just deepened it and solidified it.
And I would add maybe also allowed it to be shaped and
Mm-hmm.
continue on in a certain direction.
Yep.
I can remember when we first talked, you waited a while before telling me that that
Mm-hmm.
transition had occurred.
Yeah.
And then, when we talked about it, I thought, okay, well, you're probably somewhere around the second half of location 2, which for anybody that's watching this that doesn't know what that is, you can just go to nonsymbolic.org and click on the publications page, and then there's a summary article there that tells you what I'm talking about there. But they're basically just different ways of experience this. Now, the second half of location 2, of course, is an awesome sweet spot. I mean, it's so positive and really such a wonderful place, very high functioning, and awesomely happy, and still has a range of mostly positive and some negative emotions that occasionally creep in, but mostly positive, almost entirely positive emotion. And then you were telling me a little bit later that there was a shift for you think, between locations, essentially, from that sort of later part of location 2 into location 3, which is really just a very positive, ongoing emotional experience of love and joy and compassion, things like that. So can you talk a little bit about that? And do you think was it like the unprovoked happiness type of methods that were in that second part that kind of biased you and helped you move along, do you think? Or what do you think went on there?
Well, just the emotions. I have no negativity. I mean, there is just no negativity. It's, I mean, there's an annoyance here and there, but, I'm just observing life. I'm observing myself, and I think the non-duality puts you in sort of a different level, understanding that, and realizing the non-duality portion of yourself, and I'm sorry, it was unprovoked happiness. I spoke incorrectly. I said authentic happiness, but it's unprovoked happiness. I love that. I mean, I live in that almost 24 hours a day. I can see the consciousness in the most mundane little things and big things. 2-hour traffic jam, no big deal. My husband's going ballistic, and I'm going, well, you know. So I think it's the overall emotional well-being, um, and just the feelings of love and joy and just life. I'm just relaxed into being and living, um, and just being aware of lots of little things.
One of the things that everybody in the course has the benefit of is there's just such a wealth of knowledge that's available about this.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't have that. You know, most people, when they transition to PNSE, they're isolated often. They're surrounded by people who have no idea what they're talking about because they've not experienced anything like it.
Right.
And so, you know, there was sort of a contextualization, I think, as part of the course,
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting and kind of helpful as well.
Yes, well, it was very helpful to have the group, and it was very, very helpful to have you too and your expertise. You know, I went through this kind of slightly euphoric phase where, you know, it was also new, and you know, it's quieted into the background now. It's not. Every once in a while, I get that euphoric state, though. I don't know. It just depends on what I'm doing or what has happened, but I can still get high off of it.
It is interesting how there really can be, whether it's a euphoric state, and actually with the euphoric ones, we have to be a little careful because sometimes people who have an initial experience of it as euphoria, that can also be sort of a tendency towards a temporary version of it. And you have to
Mm.
be a little bit more careful in terms of how you lock it in and, you know, what you do to lock it in and whatnot. It's why,
Well,
go ahead.
that's why I waited to talk to you for 4 or 5 days. I was going to see if it, like, hey, is this really happening? Is this real? Am I just imagining it? But no, it's stuck. I'm not persistent yet, but I'm 4 months in. I really I really consider March 10th like a new birthday because it is like a rebirth and a reawakening. So that's
So you remember the specific day? First of all, before I ask you about that, let me just say for people that are thinking, well, wait a minute, she doesn't think she's persistent. That's
oh
a comment on my academic definition of it. So
okay.
on the academic side of the fence, I basically had to draw a line in the sand for who was going to be a participant and who wasn't. And when we were looking at and thinking about, well, what do we call, you know, at what point do we call someone persistent versus just sort of temporary? We just, I mean, kind of frankly, arbitrarily decided, well, let's just pick a year. Let's just say that someone has to be in it solidly for a year before we'll allow them in the research population
Hmm.
or whatever else. And so that's what she's referring to there. She's not saying that it's not persistent in her life or not sort of a constant companion in her life or whatever. Okay, so tell me about that date. Do you remember a specific moment or?
Well, it was kind of the night before. I had a wonderful meditation the night before, and I had watched that TV program Cosmos. I don't know if you're watching that or if anyone is watching that, but it's a great show, and it just really um, put me in this very cosmic mood of just our little tiny existence in the universe and the all being, and I I got kind of far out in my meditation. It was very cosmic and just thought to myself, I think I'm going to wake up in the morning awakened. And I did. It was just, I transitioned sometime during the night, I guess. And I woke up with just I mean, a new perspective, a new clarity. Everything was, it's like you had a fog filter on your life and it was just lifted. And everything sharpens into focus. And, my new favorite word, clarity, is so descriptive of what it felt like. So I literally woke up in this new observational capacity, just kind of observing everything, feeling like a new me. And for a long time, I referred myself to the old Rebekah and new Rebekah. I think I've transitioned to the new. I'm not referring back to the old Rebekah so much, but I was comparing, how I would react to different life situations. And that comparison was pretty in the forefront for a couple of months, and now I've just sort of relaxed into the new Rebekah. So, yeah, it was like stepping through a veil, really was.
Well, that's cool. Do you think that so sometimes when I talk to people, they talk about, being afraid of losing this self that they've worked so hard on, and you were somebody who was super happy before this, right? So, I mean, if you're super happy, I mean, what's the point of making this transition or that kind of thing? So there's a lot of fear around this. And there also, I've noticed, when people have the opportunity to experience this, there's often a tremendous amount of fear that basically holds them back because they think that their unhappiness or their discomfort or their fears and their whatever are really what sort of drive their achievement or drive them forward in life. So I'm curious to get your perspective on these kinds of things. Is there, in your opinion, anything for someone to fear about this? I mean, do you just basically become a couch potato, from that point on, all motivation is gone, or, what is it like?
I have a phrase for that I have found, and it's the energy of peace. There's an energy, but with a peaceful background. There's always peace, but there's an energy to it, and you can draw on that energy to whatever extent you desire. I'm a laid-back kind of a person, and I'm also semi-retired. I'm in a different phase of life than some dynamic mover and shaker in the world. I've never been that. So you can draw on that energy, but have peace in your being. So no, I don't think would be anything to fear from this. But people, how can I put this? If you're drawn to negativity, or if that is something you fear, you might manifest it. I don't know. I mean, I am not a fearful person anyway, so that did not change. And I see only good in this course and in this this finding. But people will get out of it what they will,
I think generally, from a persistent non-symbolic experience standpoint, one of the things that leaves is fear.
Yeah.
So I don't think that people would really, or even necessarily could, use the energy that you're talking about
Yeah.
in the direction of fear or in sort of a fear-based way. I think for them the concern is more, well, when I lose that fear, that's such a powerful motivator for me in life, you know,
Well,
what
you know
result?
what? You can use the energy of love in just the same way. It's just a new way of new perspective. And if you can release that fear from your life, who wouldn't want that?
And for someone that has the fear of, you know, and I think some of it comes from the way I write about it and the way I speak about it, especially from an academic standpoint, where I talk about sort of this fundamental transition in sense of self
Hmm.
away from a narrative-based, highly individualized sense of self to something else, to what we're talking about here today. I think so many people have this view that, you know, well, I've put so much effort into, you know, that into who I am. Um, and maybe they even really, you know, like who they are. I mean, I get the sense that before you transitioned into this, you were very happy. You probably, for the most part, liked who you were.
Hmm.
Um, so, you know, what would you tell someone who's going into this who really sort of has that view? Well, you're talking about this very fundamental shift in what it's like to be me, but I really worked hard on myself and I really like myself. Or even if I didn't work hard on myself, I just really like myself. Uh,
Well, all your experiences in your life leads up to who you are, and that doesn't change. Your personality doesn't change. Um, uh, you know, if you're a happy person before PNSE, you'll be a happy person plus after. You know, if you're a jerk before, you'll probably be a jerk afterwards. I don't know. Um, but you know, if you're happy and have worked to be who you are, that doesn't change. It's there's just a new perspective of who you are and who you are in the world, and in the universe, and in harmony with other people, rather than in resistance to other people. Um, so you can be who you are and who you've worked hard to be. You just we can all use improvement.
what when you talk about things like perspective and clarity and things like that as part of the sort of a fundamental part of this shift, what do you mean by that? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Um,
It's a focus. It's being aware, um, probably in a sharper, more clearer way. That's really hard to describe. Um, it's hard to describe perspective. Um, so you have, or I have, a perspective from a love and a oneness and a joyful being rather than in resistance. I can remember being in life situations where I didn't want to be there and I would resist it. But now, if I'm in a life situation where I don't want to be, I either change it, or if it's inevitable and I can't escape the situation I'm in, I just accept it and you know, see the good in it, or um, just go within and access my peace and my joy, and um, know that it will pass. It won't last forever. So the perspective, the clarity is clarity. It's uh, you know, I'm using photography metaphors, but it's just a new filter. It's a new focus. It's a new awareness of what you're seeing and how you interpret it, with positive emotions rather than negative.
right, which makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Did you notice a change at all in terms of your goals or life aspirations or, you know, anything along those lines?
My goals did not change. Um, once I achieved them, I didn't really set new goals because the goals that I had were just monumentally achieved, and that was wonderful.
So are you talking just about goals in the course, or are you talking about sort of life goals or beyond the course in general?
Well, the goals in my course were my life goals. So I really have no goals now. I'm just living. I'm just living and being and experiencing. Having achieved this level of peace and awareness and beingness and consciousness, you know, I don't know. Maybe there will be future goals, but right now I'm really happy with being right where I am.
I mean, it surprised me when, frankly, you woke up at the
I
latter
know.
part of first class, because I think as probably you remember that it was called the Finder's Course because we had research that basically suggested that it was important for people to do two things. First of all, to find a method that worked really well, which is very, very hard to do. There's tons of methods out there. It's virtually impossible to figure out which ones are good. And then second, to figure out which one of those awesome methods matches you specifically, right? So the whole idea with the Finder's Course was that you would find the optimum method or methods for you to use. I wasn't really thinking when I called it the Finder's Course about it being a course that during the running of it would transition people from seekers to finders. I mean, I figured it would do it, you know, within a couple of years or so of people finding their good method to work on or something. But I had planned on these longitudinal data follow-ups, and you know, this is like the beginning of a long process from my perspective. And when you sent me that email at the end of the first course, or near the end of the first course, I was like,
What?
okay, well, let's do an interview on this. That doesn't sound like that could have happened yet. Let's see where she's at, and let's try to dig into this a little bit, and whatever else. But, you know, sure enough, you totally transitioned to an awesome spot, even with PNSE at that point. And the course is, of course, I mean, frankly, the course is kind of tuned to those sweet spots on the continuum that are especially awesome to experience. Any place on the continuum is awesome to experience, but I think there are like some places that are, you know, especially like super functional and super amazing at the same time. So yeah, you know,
No surprise.
you surprised me.
Well, and as I've told you before, I'm surprised that you were surprised. So.
So you were really finder number one from the course. We should get you like a little necklace or something.
Little badge.
A little badge or something. All right, I think that's a really good and super valuable point in terms of taking this thing seriously. You really do have to do it. For as much work, you know, 8 years of research and whatever else that went into creating this thing, ultimately, that wouldn't have mattered one bit had, you know, the people that showed up not been really there to dig in and to immerse themselves. So it's, you know, the course played a certain role, but that attitude.
We had a great group. Everyone was fully committed, and you know, I think all of us took it very seriously, but we had a lot of laughter and a lot of sharing and a lot of great times. You know, you sort of have to lighten up on enlightenment and and not try too hard, because if you try too hard, you'll never find it. You have to let it come naturally.
What would you tell people about that? I think that's such an important point, and it's a point that everyone at some point reached in the course. It was a very important aha moment that people had at very different times. And yet I think it's just so critical. There wasn't some sort of specific training, or we didn't have a week that produced it or whatever. It's kind of one of those things that you have to just get to on your own. What advice can you really provide to people along those lines?
Not really advice so much as, and I'm sure everyone listening to this has read this somewhere in their seeking, that you already know this within yourself. You just have to remember it, and you just have to realize it. And I think one of a key phrase, I think it was out of the non-duality method, was just the naturalness of the living moment. That sums it up for me. Just being. It's simply being. It's the naturalness. It's the naturalness of the living moment. I loved that phrase, and that was a key realization, that we are all being, we're all consciousness, and we can all be aware of an elevated consciousness. But it's just so natural, and you have to get there to know that. Yeah, people can tell you that, but until you get there, you just have to trust that it's there, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it really does feel like it's always there, yet it's covered. And of course, I think part of that is that our senses are so good at blocking out things that don't change. You know, our senses are designed. Our senses are really sort of how we experience things, of course. And our senses are designed to block out things that don't change.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything that fundamentally doesn't change,
It's
you know,
change.
that sits underneath that, right? And so it just kind of screens it out. And it takes these different types of techniques and being hit from just the right angle, or maybe sometimes a whole bunch of different angles, some of which are the right angles in certain combinations or whatever, to sort of make you realize, oh, yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Kind of like if you look at, you know, there are those optical illusions and stuff where people will only see a picture one way, even though there's a couple of different ways to see it, you know, or there's stuff hidden in the picture, and initially you can't see the thing that's hidden in the picture, but oh, there it is, you know, once somebody points it out to you, or once you have a shift in your awareness somehow and you notice it. It's
Yeah.
funny because it's just kind of that simple.
And then after you see the optical illusion, you can't look at it the other way. I mean, once you see that hidden face or hidden whatever it is, then that's all you're focusing on. Like, how could I not see that?
Is there anything else that you can think about? Is there anything else that you want to say or point you want to make or anything like that?
No, you know, I had made a few notes and we covered all of them.
All right, I am sure we will talk soon.
Okay, well, have a good rest of the day and take care.
You too.
Namaste.
Have an awesome time up in your trailer and your camping experience with all your friends.
All right, well, love to you.
Love to you too.
Bye.
Bye bye.